I'm Julia Fursova. I am assistant professor at the School of Leadership Studies, University of New Brunswick. And I'm also a co-founder and co-director of Transform Practice Worker Co-op. I also would like to respectfully acknowledge that I'm connecting from the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq, Wolastoqiyik, and Passamaquoddy peoples. And I also would like to invite everyone to share what land you are connecting from on this beautiful Turtle Island. Share what land you are connecting from in the chat box. And if you are not sure on what indigenous lands you are located, please find a link in the chat box to the interactive map that can help you to locate yourself on the indigenous lands. So with me are presenting are Juliet and Emma. And Juliet and Emma, please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Julia. Hi, everyone. My name is Juliet Kego Monido, and I'm a part of this project in the capacity of a community advisor. But my co-op affiliations are the Whole Women Network Cooperative and the Black Women Professional Cooperative. I'm also founding member of the Banker Ladies Council of Canada, the Rosca Network. And I'm coming to you from the city of Richmond Hill. And the city that we call Richmond Hill is on the treaty lands of the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the Mississauga Chippewa Nations of the Williams Treaty. And this year marks the beginning of the second decades of the people of African descent. And so, in addition to all treaty people, I would also want to acknowledge all those who came here as settlers, as immigrants, either in this generation or generations past. All those who came here involuntarily, particularly those ancestors who were brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slavery. Thank you. And I'll pass it on to Emma.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Julia. And hello, everyone. Before we begin the workshop, I would like to share some truth about myself and about the place that many of us call home. I'm not indigenous, rather, I'm a settler colonial ancestry. Although my heritage extends to India, I, like many other settler people, have benefited greatly from living on Turtle Island. As a visitor on this land, I have an important responsibility to acknowledge the grounds on which we are privileged to gather in the pursuit of higher learning from the cooperative perspective. My home is located in the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe. I believe that it is not only important to recognize the Mississauga for the care for the care and the teachings about the earth and our relationship, but to honor those teachings through our interactions today and every day hereafter. Nearly 100 years ago, Canada and seven Mississauga and Chippewa First Nations signed agreement that became known as the Williams Treaty. These agreements were intended to be the foundation upon which sovereign people would build a common relationship, but lead to long-standing dispute about compensation, settlement, and harvesting. In the light of this history and understanding a role as treaty people, may we dedicate ourselves to moving forward in the spirit of partnership, collaboration, and reconciliation as we learn together and contemplate the possibilities that lay ahead. A little bit about me. I'm a co-founder of Artisan Apparel Cooperative, which is a group of artisans connected through a worker cooperative development program at WMRCC. We offer garment tailored to each client's unique styles, culture, and fit. With over 100 years of combined experience, every piece we create is crafted with care and pride. As for me personally, I'm Indo-Canadian, a professional with a background in accountancy and business administration. With over 20 years of experience in IT project management, I help keep up our operation running smoothly and the team organized. And I'm passionate about building inclusive spaces where women can lead, collaborate, and thrive. And I truly believe that the right system in place, creativity can flourish. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Emma and Juliet. And very briefly, I just want to spotlight other project team members because we are a big team. And with us are Hazel Corcoran of the Canadian Worker Co-op Federation. Please spotlight on Hazel. Ola Shornbo, my colleague from UNB. And Daria Taran, my colleague from University of Guelph, who will also be sharing the presenting floor with us. Thank you so much. And I'm moving on to the next slide that introduces you to the research project that informed this workshop. So our research project, collaborative research project, is a participatory action research co-designed and co-implemented with the Canadian Worker Co-op Federation. The project is co-led with the academic team and Community Advisory Circle. Community Advisory Circle is comprised of worker co-op members who represent equity denied groups. And by equity denied groups, or EDG is the shorthand that we often use, by EDG we mean women, non-binary folks, racialized and indigenous peoples, LGBTQ2A+ communities, newcomers, and by newcomers we include immigrants and refugee and asylum seekers and people with jeopardized status, and also peoples with disabilities as part of the equity denied groups. These are the groups who have been historically oppressed and marginalized in the decision-making process in the patriarchal capitalist systems. The other terms that are often used are equity deserving or equity seeking groups, but equity denied is the term that we collectively agreed upon. Our data collection in this research project included two phases. The first phase involved social network analysis, which was basically a survey sent to the EDG-led worker co-ops. And then social network analysis was followed by individual interviews with co-op founders and or co-op members. Social network survey is a form of survey that asks questions about co-ops' interactions with other co-ops and supporting organization in the co-op movement or co-op ecosystem, including funders, co-op developers, and regional networks. The survey measured the frequency and quality of connections, as well as the types of connections, like why or what is the purpose of connections. And today we will share key findings emerging from this research, including a social network map that looks at the EDG-led worker co-ops within a cooperative ecosystem, sort of from a bird's eye view. And we will share key themes emerging from individual interviews that shed more light on the position of EDG-led worker co-ops, on their position on the map. In addition to that, we will also share an ecosystem navigation tool, a resource guide for EDG-led co-ops and their allies to support co-ops development, networking, and collaboration. And now I would like to hand over the next slide to Juliet to lead us through a guided meditation before we dive into those findings and the discussions informed by these findings. Over to you, Juliet. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Julia. I really like to invite all of you now to sit comfortably in your seats wherever you are. And if possible, place your feet firmly on the ground. If it's convenient for you, you can close your eyes and take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. As we begin this guided meditation, I want to just start by saying there's a proverb, an African proverb, an indigenous proverb also, that a society grows great when the older people plant trees under whose shade they know they shall never sit on. And so I want you to feel rooted in your space, so your feet firmly touches the ground, and you notice and observe that connection. Imagine a seed falling on a hard, inhospitable surface a hard, compact ground, or even a concrete pavement. Watch that seed finding a crevice, a crack, and in the words of Rumi, that crack, that wound is where the light comes in from. And so hold this light that has opened up in you as you watch this seed taking in moisture, grabbing on the grains on the dirt and the sand. The seed gathers the resources that it needs. No more than that, just what it needs. Watch the seed growing. At first, it is a seedling. Bit by bit, it grows bigger and bigger, and eventually, it becomes a young tree. Picture yourself opening up and flowering with this tree. Picture yourself growing, the branches sprouting out, letting go of biases, of prejudices. Picture yourself unfurling like this tree, becoming more curious, letting go of judgment. Picture yourself breaking open, just like the tree breaks into the pavement around, like mushrooms connecting with others underneath. Picture yourself connecting with everyone in this space, with everyone outside this space. And then, like the tree, moving around, creating space for more water, more soil, more light to nurture the roots. This tree grows stronger and stronger, and then it turns into this large, magnificent, mighty tree. The tree creates a habitat, an ecosystem around it. It provides home and nourishment for many other creatures. Notice the birds sitting on the branches, animals sleeping underneath the tree. Find a caterpillar making a cocoon. Find a moth or two hiding underneath the leaves. Now, notice Notice how the tree broke the concrete pavement and collaborated with the rain, with the winds, with all the elements that should destroy it, and yet it thrives. And all the other plants and animals, turning the hard surface into a soft, mush, warm soil to host other plants, to grow an ecosystem. Look at the habitat it created around itself. Look, see the foliage, see the greens, see the flowering, see the colors. Sit in the shade of that tree. I invite you to watch how it sways in the wind. Hear the sounds that it makes, the sounds of the leaves, the sounds of fruits falling, the sounds of children gathering, enjoying laughter. Enjoy the tree's strong and calming presence. Reach out, touch its bark, feel its leaves and branches. Hug the tree. Wrap your arms around its trunk. Feel how you're stretching your arms to hug the big trunk of this mighty tree. And if you can, hug yourself now as you imagine yourself pressing your body against the tree and feel how the tree is sharing its energy and wisdoms with you. Think of those that have come before you, those that fought systems that should have destroyed them, and then they rose just like the tree. Look up into the tree's canopy and leaves, and now thank the tree for the time it spent with you, and then gently, gently, gently come back into this space, into this room. All cooperatives were once a seed that fell on the ground, against all odds, gathered resources, grew roots, broke the pavement, and joined an ecosystem all around it. For some co-ops, the ground is harder, the environment is less hospitable. And so, as we come together today as a cooperative movement, a solidarity movement, how can we support each other? How can we support emerging co-ops, especially co-ops that are marginalized? How can we create a stronger movement so that all seeds can sprout, can grow, and can add and share their resources, their wisdom, their gifts, their essence, their abundance to this vibrant ecosystem? Thank you.
Thank you, Juliet, for facilitating this beautiful meditation, for this beautiful guided journey. Now, I would like to invite Emma to take us to the next slide to share the themes from the research that speak to where do the co-op seeds grow from.
Thank you, Juliet, and thank you, Julia. Juliet, I'm still in. It's hard to come back. Your voice is so beautiful, and I feel really grounded. And you said it right. The co-op movement, the seed does go into the unwelcoming, hard surfaces, and it is really at the core. I would say the co-op leadership and partner participation. It's not random. They are shaped by a mix of personal experiences, values, and community connections. Um, if you look at the slide, there are a few groups, I would say. You see like lived experiences plus aligning the work with the core personal values. So before I start as to where the co-op seed grows, like my co-op seed was planted like long time ago, I would say before my birth. So my mom was part of a co-op movement, I would say, back in long time ago before my birth in India. And she was a banker, and she was part of a cooperative bank. And that's where my journey started, and the exposure to the co-op culture since I was young. I've seen those seeds, grow, like take to fruition. I've seen the connections that have been formed as part of my experiences, as part of my mom's journey. And now a full circle back, those are happening with me within my co-op at Artisan Apparel. I'm seeing those little seeds now trying to sprout, and the relationship getting built. Um, I had a lot of influence by like my mother. That's why when I came to Canada, I didn't know about the co-op movement. I just came in and I never thought that, oh, I should look into the co-op sector. I started into corporate, and one day I just learned that, oh, there is something a co-op related happening. And I'm like, oh, what is that? And then when I looked back, the seed that my mom has planted, it came back to me, and I'm like, hey, I need to get into this. And that's how my experiences, my life experiences, that's how my seed started to grow. But there are many people who face challenges when they come to Canada. There are a lot of barriers that it comes coming into a new country, settling, making a living. It's not an easy feat, I would say, to take for a person. So some of the people who come here, they come with their own experiences, and they want those experiences to be part of their journey going forward. So that's how their seeds start to grow from there. Those sometimes we say the barriers are the difficult part of it, but the barriers is what helps us grow, and those are the ones that make us move forward in life. And often we develop the strong awareness of the systemic gaps that are here, and that awareness can motivate us to seek or build alternatives like the co-op. Rather than going into the mainstream businesses, people come in and they join the co-op movement. These experiences are often reinforced in the everyday life as well. For me, it was my mom's influence who modeled the cooperation, mutual aid, and the community care. But there are others, like if we shift in the slide, people can develop the desire to help the communities and the commitment to the community development. Um, so Thank you. I was trying to, yes.
Sorry, Emma, when you said shift to the slide, I thought you meant I'm switching to the next slide. My apologies.
No, sorry. I'm shifting from the left to right. Thank you for bringing it back. If you look at on the right side, many individuals are motivated by aligning their work with the core personal values, and they are wanting to create their careers and reflect in what they believe in. And so it could be the commitment to the community development, or it could be desire to help the communities, or desire to help the seniors, or it could be to reduce the barriers of the employment. Also, uh, this thing part of it can also lead to directly responding to the needs and priorities of Black communities and the other communities as well. And especially the ones which are undeserved groups, or where the co-ops are seen as a tools for empowerment, equity, and self-determination. So overall, the co-op seed grows from the combination of the lived experiences like me and the earlier influences, community commitment, and the desire to align the work with the values. Ultimately, it leads to the action that supports the upliftment of the communities. Yes, now we can move on to the next slide. Thank you. So everyone has a different journey, and and I see that there are around 30 members in here, and what we would like to see is if you could share why did you start or join the co-op. Your experiences in the chat box. I would like some of the members to learn about each other's journey, and we can talk about those for a little bit. Please do share them in the chat box. I'd like to, or if anybody is interested in unmuting them and sharing their journey, please raise your hand so we can hear from you directly as well. Okay, I see one hand, Ifo. Can you please unmute yourself and
Yes,
yes, go ahead.
mine is because I see a need for um, economic development, also for jobs, and there are also services that are needed within the African community, both here and back home. We have communities that have high unemployment, but lots of skills. So looking at ways in which we can have multiple co-ops that can support that process. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Any other hand? Chloe, please do see if there is anybody else have their hand up.
Go ahead.
Everybody. My name is Christine. I joined the co-op movement. I was a farmer at the time, and I was really inspired by Fannie Lou Hamer, who was a Black civil rights activist and farmer, and saw Black food sovereignty as a means toward Black liberation. And I was really inspired by that and wanted to farm in community for community. And that is how I joined, or actually, it's how I started a co-op called Freedom Dreams Co-op, which was a means to gather other like-minded folks who, as you said, Emma, wanted to have that values alignment within their organizing and within their businesses. And I'm happy to say that we did find that community. And so community, I would say, is the big reason for joining a co-op.
And I see that theme. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I see that theme coming through. People, especially with the community mindset, they usually don't go into the mainstream. They try to find the alternatives like the co-op, and it's a big time. Yeah, you can see the success coming through this movement. And I'm also reading the comments, and I'm seeing the same theme there. Some of the comments I would like to read is some may touch you deeply, but I think that's a part of the learning and acquiring that awareness. So I see her, Rashid, the comment from Rashid. He says that I'm from the state of USA, where there is a legal context that is called right to hire, right to fire, which I feel is deeply deep-seated remnant from the slavery. That could be a reason for starting the co-op as well, because when you're coming into a cooperative, it's not the hire and fire kind of a thing. It's more like, everybody is equal. You come together, you work together, and that's how you build a community and you move forward. So thank you so much, Rashid, for that comment. Hazel has a comment, passion from employee ownership and democracy. While at law school, I did an independent research project in French on laws to create more and better employee ownership. I found the worker co-op movement, co-op model, including the most of the interesting work then was happening in Quebec and other parts of French-speaking Canada. And I said, Eureka, what I'm looking for. ICANN WC Federation was formed in my last year of law school, up the road where I was attending school at Dalhousie. Again, it's the passion, the same thing, the ownership that is coming from the the workers model. That it is intriguing. It is something that draws you in, and for Hazel, I can definitely say it. She made it her lifetime work to be part of this movement. So Hazel, hats off to you and congratulations for that. And thank you very much for doing what you do. And I totally appreciate your contribution to the co-op sector here.
Thank you, Emma. I would say the same to you, and I just want to flag, I added a piece, you don't have to read it, but I am retiring at the end of this year. And if anybody didn't know that, and the application deadline just closed, but if anybody didn't know that and you're just learning that news and you're interested in becoming a new co-executive director or executive director of CWCF, I would pitch to the hiring committee that they extend the deadline, but you better tell us very fast. Enough
That
said.
would be amazing. That's it. That is a good that good news. Yeah, the deadline should be extended. I think there are more people who needs to be part of this movement, so that we can wholeheartedly serve the community. I think that's the main idea behind the co-op movement. You live in a human way, that is the way how you're supposed to live. Also, I'm going to read another. I know there is a time check for me, so I'm going to read another one or two comments, and then we will move on to the next slide. But I would remind everyone that we do have a breakout session, so there would be some discussions going into it. So please don't mind if I haven't read your comment, but in the essence of time, I'll read one more and then we'll move forward. As a neurodivergent single mom, the cleaning co-op was one of the few employers that would offer me the flexibility I needed in both my schedule and my work habits, accommodating my needs both as a mother and AUDHD. typically corporate structure rarely allow for these. Totally agree with this comment because yes, being a part of the corporate world, I have seen, I have lived through this experience as well. So I totally understand how it could be difficult to raise your family and also accommodate your own personal needs as well. So thank you very much for sharing that, Hannah. And it is, see, this again is a common theme. It's doing business in a human way for the human and to serve the human. So that is something the co-op does give you the freedom to do it. And anybody interested in starting the co-op, there are resources available. CWSF is doing a great job helping out the individuals. If you see on the slide, there are a few resources that I can that we can share with you. And also, please don't worry about copying all the materials from here. What we will be doing at the end of our session is we'll be sending the resources to you, and this will be available on the CWCF JEDI webpage. And they will be continuously updated so that documents are not stale, and you are always getting the resources updated documentation. So there are a few things here that we wanted to highlight is how to start a cooperative. And this is a picture booklet by IMOL Arts and Technology Cooperative. It's a picture handbook. For someone who is coming in, oftentimes I've seen in running my own cooperative, there is a barrier of language. People have difficulty in understanding and reading the big books, right? And then doing the business. But there are also resources available, like a picture book where you can look at the booklet and you can understand the gist of it. So that would be a beginning. As you move forward, you can get into the details where the co-op conversation guide, which is designed by the iMove Arts led by African Nova Scotian communities. And finally, the Starting a Worker Co-op handbook developed by the Canadian Worker Co-op Federation, which has valuable information which could be useful for and benefit not only for the existing, but also for not only for the newcomers, but also for the existing co-op. We can move on to the next slide, and I would hand over to Ola for talking about the research that we've the details from the research. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emma. Ola, over to you.
Thank you, Emma. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Let me know if you're having trouble hearing me, because sometimes my voice is hard to hear.
Yeah.
So these maps. So one of the questions we wanted to ask in this research was really to look at how EDG-led co-ops are connected to each other and to other organizations in the co-op ecosystem. So these maps are kind of a visual representation of that data that we hope can sort of reveal patterns in how those connections are happening. And this particular map that we're looking on here is a kind of it's a snapshot of the whole system that we looked at. So it's a big kind of bird's eye view of all the data that we had. And so obviously I know that the nodes, the labels on the nodes and the names of the organizations are too small to read. So apologies for that, but I think it's still, we want to show this just to kind of give a sense of the overall system that we're seeing and some of the patterns that we noticed in the overall system. So even from this map where you can't really read the labels, we can see that the blue turquoise organizations that are mostly in the center of the maps are the EDG-led co-ops that we collected data from. And you can see that they are actually reasonably densely connected to each other, moderately densely connected to one another, and sort of located in the center of the map. But all the other labels, the other boxes, the kind of the green hexagons and the pinks, the oranges, particularly the pinks, the oranges, are blue, are support services and funding programs. And you can see that those are sort of located at the edges of the map, and most of them are only connected to one of the turquoise nodes, and sometimes not directly to any of the turquoise nodes. Most of the turquoise nodes don't have any direct connections to these kind of support organizations. So just from that, we can see already that suggests that it's difficult for EDG-led co-ops to access these kinds of support services, and the support services are not very well connected throughout the system. The other pattern that we see is that there are a few of the turquoise nodes that are connected to many, they're sort of central, they're connected to many support organizations. And so that's great. So we have some sort of, from our meditation, we have some mighty trees who are well connected to the other two other resources. But unfortunately, that does mean that the system becomes quite dependent on those nodes. And if they disappear, it can create vulnerabilities. So maybe what we need is a bit more mycelium to connect these organizations more broadly throughout the system, not just to kind of central pillars at the edges. So those are just kind of a couple of patterns that you can see from this map. We have several other kind of these sorts of maps that we're hopefully using. And we're sort of interested in hearing from folks whether this visual representation feels true to their experience of what it's like to be in the sector and work in it. But yeah, that's all we wanted to say about this map and about that for now. Unless people have any immediate questions.
Thank you, Ola. I will take over from here. And I will share a bit on the challenges that equity denied groups led worker co-ops face in the ecosystem, but also in general. So let's look at these challenges and barriers that EDG-led worker co-ops experience that may explain their marginal position within the broader co-op ecosystem. So the challenges that the co-op founders described can be grouped in two categories. The external ones that have to do with broader systemic issues outside of the co-op ecosystem, and internal that have to do with the challenges co-ops experience during the interaction with the cooperative ecosystem in relation to working with other co-ops, accessing training, funding, and networking, and also related to their own internal co-op dynamics. So in external challenges are experienced as budget cuts undermining the nonprofit sector, reliance on government procurement that makes nonprofit co-ops overly dependent on government contracts, and the key external challenges are systemic racism and patriarchy experienced by co-op members from equity denied groups. Budget cuts, patriarchy, and racism, and you will see on the map the lines with an arrow pointing to financial vulnerability experienced by EDGs. So these budget cuts and systemic patriarchy and racism produce another key theme described as financial vulnerability experienced by equity denied groups. That then creates multiple numerous barriers such as debt, jeopardized access to fundamentals of living, such as food, shelter, transportation, and material overcompensation as a coping mechanism that further drives people into debt. Equity denied members experience difficulty navigating Canadian systems in general, from healthcare and education to cooperatives and to cooperative systems. And then further, undocumented groups such as refugee and asylum seekers whose immigration status is threatened or jeopardized are facing biggest barriers. They're facing the biggest difficulties when starting or joining co-ops. Now, the next group of challenges are internal. Internal challenges, and this is where it gets really interesting. Not that it wasn't interesting before, but I think this was the most complex groups of findings to describe. So internal challenges are expressed as a mismatch between formal Canadian and other co-op cultures, mostly co-op cultures from the global south. So this is what you can see in the bottom left corner of this map. It is experienced as a culture clash between the informality of the traditional co-op cultures within equity-denied groups versus formal demands of a very structured Canadian co-op sector. And then it may cause a mismatch between member expectations and reality. So you see this mismatch represented in the right upper corner of the map. So there are also differences in approaches too. EDG-led co-ops pursue a bottom-up approach to programs and service development, and that it may clash with a formal, very much top-down approach to service provision espoused by the nonprofit and public sector in Canada. And within the co-op movement itself, there is a notable lack of diversity due to the lack of access to capital for EDG-led co-ops. And that is despite the fact for many equity-denied groups, the co-op model is the traditional way of life. And such a mismatch between formal Canadian and EDG-led co-op cultures contributes to the challenge with securing resources for co-op development. So this is the other key group of challenges here, somewhat not quite in the middle of the map, closer to the left side, securing resources for co-ops. EDG-led co-ops struggle to locate funding, secure consistent funding for non-profit co-ops. All EDG-led co-ops that participated in this research experienced lack of access to hard infrastructure, including access to space, and also difficulty accessing resources that results in challenges with human resources that are experienced often as overworked employees or overworked members, undermined human capacity, relationships dynamic between members, and there was also a sentiment expressed that although 3 people are the minimum requirement for registering a worker co-op, for the full functioning of the co-op, 3 people may not be enough. And another internal challenge mentioned was IT literacy, information technology literacy among members, and the need for continuous capacity building in IT fluency among members. Another interesting challenge that is also kind of nice to have is the one in the bottom right corner, or slightly, almost bottom corner. Scaling up, developing the capacity to match the increased demand for services. It is a challenge that is sort of nice to have, but it's still a challenge, right? Because co-ops that realize that there is increased demand for their services, they still struggle to develop that capacity to match this increased demand because they, in general, face more barriers to secure resources for the co-op. And now I'm handing it over to Emma again to facilitate our next interaction part, where we ask you, our audience, we ask you what, if anything, surprises you about these findings. How has your co-op encountered similar challenges? And is there anything that, in your opinion, is missing in the themes presented with respect to the challenges? So over to you, Emma.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Julia, about providing the internal and external challenges, because these factors, the financial vulnerability specifically is a bigger challenge that we see, because especially if I'm talking about being in Canada, it's someone is coming new, and you don't know about the system, you don't know about how to navigate the system, so it do become a challenging. That's the biggest theme that we have seen. Apart I do want to welcome the suggestions, findings, comments from the participant here. Is this surprising? Does this surprise you at all? Like, is this something that you yourself are encountering? Can anyone, do anyone wants to raise their hand and talk about it for a minute? And also, please keep the comments coming, because the more you comment, the more we understand, and we try to find out these details as to where the challenges could be. Is it something that our research we have not covered? It's not part of it. So we would definitely love to learn about that, and it would help us improve whatever we could within the co-op system. So please use the raise the hand function, and please keep the comments coming in the chat, because these comments are not just your experiences, but this is something that could be taken forward and worked on, and we could see if there is something that we could do about it. Oh my goodness, this is awfully shy group.
Yeah, I thought there will be more action in response to challenges.
Yes, please don't we are in a co-op setting, so please be free to speak your mind, because unlike the mainstream workflows or the mainstream businesses, we are more human we have a more human way of dealing with people and understanding them. So please do raise your hands, and I think I see some of the comments coming through.
There was a comment asking me to move back to the slide with challenges. I just need a clarification, internal or external, because we have two slides speaking to the challenges theme.
Yes.
External, yeah.
Yeah. It's not, we have divided those into internal and external, but
External.
it doesn't have to be,
Yeah.
you can speak to your experiences and the challenges that you have faced. It's something that we have not covered here. So please do.
Emma, I just want
I
to make
see.
the comment that Amin has raised their hand.
Yes,
So
Amin raised the,
Oh,
so
okay.
let's invite Amin to share. Hi, Amin.
Hello,
Amin.
everyone. Hello, everyone. So thank you for your the presentation. Unfortunately, I came late. I just now, and it was quite interesting about what you're talking. And as when I came here in Canada, it is something that what I believe it is missing. And they started to talk about it. It is about systemic racism that she highlighted, Julia, and maybe we talk about that is great, but I believe we need to make sensibilize the leader about that. So maybe they're hearing this about racism, systemic racism, and everything here in New Brunswick, because even when we look about the people, so actually, what I feel that the system it has already been set. Okay, so people start to realize there's something wrong about the systemic racism, which is good compared to France. But actually, we need to educate. I don't know how to educate the leader in the province, because what we can perceive it is that the discourse between the government about how they bring immigrants here and the reality, and I think there is a big gap about that. So what do you think, and how you will be able to contribute about when you talk about internal and external, example Julia, or when Ola he made his all systemic graph, how you gonna bring, to try to reduce the gap between the reality and the discourse of the government. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amin. It takes time to bridge this gap, and I guess we will keep persevering. We will persist with the awareness raising an educational event like this, and it's also about reorienting the systems from extractivist, exploitative, and oppressive towards more regenerative and humane. And I believe that co-ops can play a huge part in it. In that system shift, in the transitioning from oppression to more partnership-based economics infused with care. I'm sorry I have to be that person who watches the time and
Yes,
moves us through this. So Emma, please
yeah.
read some contributions from the chat box, and I will have to move us to the next slide. Thank
Yes,
you.
sorry, before we move on to the next slide, I did see briefly, Hazel, your hand was up, but do you have a comment that you want to?
I'll be super brief. I was just going to say that in my experience, I think that because of the relatively low resource environment for all co-op development support, it's challenging for everybody to start co-ops unless they're in Quebec and Francophone, where there are supports, but it's harder for all inequity denied groups than it is even for the average or the others, right? So, and that's a lot of people, and we need to address the whole problem of the lack of strong ecosystem, and we need to just address it even more so for those who are inequity deserving or denied groups. Thanks.
Thank you, Hazel. I know that Julia, you mentioned about the time. Maybe I'll quickly just skim through the comments at the chat, and I'll just one or two comments maybe. And I'm seeing that people are saying that they don't find it surprising. So many startup co-ops in particular face challenges in the early stages. We have definitely the experience the growing pain of increasing our capacity as demand for our own services. Okay, there is a comment about I'm not a cooperative member, but the finding about the rigidity of the Canadian sector definitely resonates based on frustrations I've heard from entrepreneurs who from global south countries who have felt discouraged by all the red tape in Canada. I think that's also a challenge with working within a largely corporate capitalist world if you don't have prior experience, even if we as a co-op want to do things differently, we still have to find a way to work within the current larger system for now. Some are saying I'm at the beginning of my learning journey, so thank you all for this. So yeah, I think yeah, the challenges are there, and I do thank you. I mean, that was a very elaborated discussion, a point that you have brought in, and as Julia and Hazel alluded, as lack of resources also, and it takes time to get into and make a difference. So the more people join the co-op movement, the more voices we will have to get this moving forward and try to break those barriers that we are facing. In the essence of time, I am going to move forward, and I think I'm going to hand it over to Hazel for the next slide.
Thank you very much, Emma. And I just want to briefly say, by way of self-intro, going further back beyond how I found the co-op movement personally myself, although I'd heard of them forever without really knowing what they were, is on my mother's side, I'm Acadian or Cajun, which is a corruption of the word Acadian. It's like saying Indian instead of Indian. But, you know, the Acadians were expelled violently from Nova Scotia and region by the British in 1755 and beyond. And the Acadians were well known for being highly cooperative and still are, whether in Louisiana or in the Maritime provinces, and also for working very harmoniously with the Indigenous peoples wherever they were and intermarrying and so on. My mother looked fairly Indigenous. I just take after the Irish side of my dad's, but I think that that history is relevant. And I know that my uncles and many in the family who were sugarcane farmers were often talking about the co-op. So it was the St. Mary's sugarcane processing co-op, and my family is still members. I'm technically a member as well, although tiny, and not an active sugarcane farmer, obviously. But I think it's really ingrained in a lot of cultures. That's just one example, and that was very much my experience. And I left Louisiana because I couldn't bear the racism and the sexism, and it's better now, but it's still a problem. Interestingly, in Louisiana, people who are Indigenous are considered like all of us, everybody else. And it's Black people primarily, and some other racialized people who are seen as highly different. And I know Indigenous people in Canada who go there because they know they're going to be treated quite well. It's fascinating. Enough said. What I meant to talk to you about in my 3 minutes here is what you see on the screen, which is the resources that are available right now, although not enough, to support especially co-ops in development, Oh, I see Nancy just entered the waiting room from CMC. So I'm meant to speak about the resources available to co-ops in development with some focus on equity denied or equity deserving groups. And one of them that's quite important is the Cooperatives Co-op Development Fund, which does grants to co-ops in development, whether brand new or continuing that are enhancing, of up to 20,000 in a grant. Often they're more amenable if it's a somewhat smaller amount. It is for matching fund basis. Unfortunately, their deadline just passed within the last week, and they get a lot of demand, but look for it in future. I'll be briefer on the others. The next one here is CWCF's, our Federation's technical assistance grants of up to $4,000 to enable a co-op, again, startup or continuing, to hire a co-op development consultant, lawyer, other, to help them with issues they're dealing with of any type, operations, governance, startup concerns, and so on. You do need to become a member of our federation as a worker co-op member or multi-stakeholder co-op member to be eligible. The granting pool is pretty much exhausted for the current financial year, but it starts up again September 1, so that's when they become available. The JEDI training bursary is a bursary of up to $1,000 to help with tuition for a racialized person who, racialized and maybe other kind of equity denied group person who is pursuing training relevant to co-op management, co-op development. For example, with the co-op zone training program that we should have called out, I'll call it out now, which trains new co-op developers or co-op developers seeking to deepen their knowledge. The racial justice grants are grants of up to $2,000 for projects which enhance racial justice in the co-op sector generally. It doesn't have to be only worker co-ops. We have a mild preference. And both of those, the JEDI training and the racial justice grants, are not exhausted for the current year. They're smaller, 1,000 bursary and 2,000 racial justice grants, but they're still available this year. Canadian Queer Chamber of Commerce is for queer entrepreneurs starting up businesses of any type that are small and medium sized, focused on the queer community. Carrot Cash is very focused on, it's up to 5,000, and it's for projects in, I think it's focused in the agriculture sector in Ontario, the food system in Ontario. So it's quite specific, but it can be helpful there. And lastly, Freedonia is a fund that was started by radical profs in Ontario, and they provide funding of up to $20,000 and other support for groups, projects, and other initiatives that promote anti-authoritarian social change, usually pretty early stage, like not a continuing co-op generally. And if they have an annual intake, generally the intake happens in February or March. And all this is going to be available to everyone on the call with the details and the link. So don't worry about frantically trying to capture it all. And now I would like to hand it over to Julia to continue. Thanks.
Thank you, Hazel. And I will reiterate your point that all resources we are listing here, they are all collated under one resource guide for EDG-led co-ops, and that will live on the updated JEDI page of the Canadian Worker Co-op Federation website, and we will introduce that at the end of the workshop. I'm just going to mention a few grant programs for non-profit co-ops, because co-ops can be registered either as a for-profit or non-profit entity. And I also have to say that non-profit co-ops, especially EDG-led non-profit co-ops, experience additional challenges because it may be harder for them to diversify their sources of funding, especially if they rely on, especially when they're focused on provision of programs and services and are contracted by the government, kind of sort of using this government procurement schemes, and then their funding cuts in relation to those programs and services. So they face unique challenges. And then in this non-profit funding system, they will be also competing with other non-profit organizations, other non-profits and charities that are not necessarily co-ops. Four programs that we wanted to feature here is Black Opportunity Fund that provides grants to Black-led not-for-profits and charities who are leading the initiatives that impact the quality of life in Canada, in Canada's Black and communities of color. Then Cooperators Community Funds support organizations and services to empower underserved youth and individuals with mental health challenges to progress along their path towards employability. And then there is Canadian Women's Foundation grants, and they provide grants to registered nonprofits to support work advancing women's rights. There is one important aspect is that these grants are offered only every 4 to 5 years, so that again limits their availability. Rainbow Grants and Awards provide funding to foster new and innovative services and programs that have a positive impact on LGBTQ2A+ communities in the Greater Toronto Area. So among these four funding programs, only one is kind of tailored towards co-ops exclusively. The three others are opened to a broader pool of nonprofits and charities. And I'm going to hand over the next slide to Juliet, who will tell us more about loan programs. Juliet, over to you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Julia. Before I go into the loan programs, I also want to mention some grant programs that apply to nonprofit co-ops. And one of them is the Foundation for Black Communities Big Ideas Grant. So that happens every year, and the funding ranges from like 25,000 to up to 250,000 for nonprofits, and including nonprofit co-ops that are national. So those that are not national will take kind of like from the smaller, they get from a smaller range up to, I believe, 45,000, and then those that are bigger get the higher amount. So that's something else that we're going to add into this resource guide, because we do have both formal and informal co-ops, like the banker ladies that have been able to access those grants. So it's just important for us to kind of have that also in our toolkit. Another grant that I want to mention for businesses is the RAISE grant. That's the racialized and indigenous support for entrepreneurs. And that is by the Ontario government. So that happens every year in the last quarter. It opens in the fall. Again, one of those grants that we know that worker co-ops have been able to access. So we'll include that. And that's on a first come, first served basis. It's up to 10,000 each year. And then another grant, the Meridian grant. Meridian, of course, as a lot of you know, is a credit union serving Ontario. So each year they have the grant for, it's called the Big Impact Grant, up to 50,000. And so it's for small business big impact grant, but it also applies to co-ops. And often I find that sometimes co-ops are not even aware that they can apply. And if you check the website now, Kama Co-op, out here in Toronto, they were one of the recipients of this year's grant. So something to kind of like think about. And then for the loan programs, I think I'll start with the CCIF loan program. That's the Canadian Co-op Investment Fund. This fund is really for co-op development, right? For financing co-op development. But like, if you look at even the website and what they've done historically, they've kind of like geared more towards housing co-ops. But going forward, the plan is that they're going to expand more to 7 worker co-ops and multi-stakeholder co-ops and all other co-ops. So if you're looking to apply for the CCIF loan, it will be good practice to contact the Canadian Worker Co-op Federation so that they can guide you in that process, right? To be able to access that. And then there's the WEOC loan, which is specifically a loan designed for women entrepreneurs. And again, some co-ops, even worker co-ops, have been able to access this. The loans are up to 50,000, and it's once you pay down that loan, you can actually, access the capital again. So it almost becomes like working capital. So it was developed by the federal government for the Women Entrepreneurship Loan Program. That's under the program. And so what they now did was have intermediary organizations. So for instance, in Ontario, it would be PARO. Like if you wanted to apply for the WEOC loan, which is the Women Enterprise Organization of Canada loan, you will be going through the intermediary organizations. They do have information sessions every Wednesday, typically. So when you click on the link, once you get these resources after this session, you'll be able to get more information. It's just a great way to kind of like see what else is out there, and to have those conversations with those entities. Then, of course, the Fair Finance Fund, serving predominantly, you know, entities in the food sector, in the agro sector, and their loans, range anywhere up to like from 20 thereabout to like 200 or 250,000 in terms of funding. And the thing about the WEOC loan and the Fair Finance loan, they're not primarily looking at just your credit score, whether as an organization or an individual. These loans are tailored to actually support those that are often sidelined by mainstream systems, right? So they look at the totality of what you're trying to build, and then they support you and they help in the process of even applying for the loan. There are info sessions with the WEOC loan. You have counselors or advisors through organizations, their intermediary organizations like PARO, to help you in the process. And then I think the final thing that I want to add here is we've had quite a number of EDG-led co-ops, specifically Black-led co-ops, that are using, Afro-Indigenous finance models like ROSCAs or ASCAs. So ROSCA is a rotating savings credit organization where groups of people come together to pool funds and then they rotate that. But in a cooperative setting, what we're seeing is people using ASCAs, which is the Accumulating, Savings and Credit Association. Basically, you pull the funds together and then you use those funds to leverage mainstream access to funds from mainstream organizations. So an example, you pull funds together and you go to a fintech platform and say, hey, this is what we have as a cooperative. Are you able to give us like a multiples of X amount of dollars, and then we will have a set amount on your platform. So these are just other creative ways that people are accessing loans. And overall, I think when we talk about loan programs, my ask for everyone is whatever loan program you're trying to access, or even grant program, if you see that cooperatives are not listed as an option, or you try applying and you get, kind of like a barrier to apply because of the nature, like of your organization as a co-op, please reach out to the Canadian Worker Co-op Federation, reach out to the CMC, because there's a lot of advocacy to educate, whether it's chambers of commerce, financial institutions, funding organizations, to include co-ops in this conversation. And that's how we change the system. So I will pause here and then just, pass this on. Unless there are questions, you can put the questions in the chat and we can address those later. So Julia, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliet. And I just want to thank you again for sharing this valuable information. I personally learned a lot, and that gave me an idea that, one of the potential follow-up sessions could be just specific sessions on loans, ROSCAs and ASCAs. And the next slide is actually over to Ola to tell us more on connections and collaborations, themes in relation to connections and collaborations, how EDG-led co-ops form and sustain those. So over to you, Ola.
Thanks, Julia. Yeah, so this is the results of the analysis of the interviews, looking for information about connections and collaborations and trying to understand how to encourage and foster those. And really, so we have the main themes are in the red, and then we have sub-themes in the black. And we really saw three main themes of how connections and collaborations occur among EDG-led co-ops. The top left, we have connections that are primarily accidental, circumstantial, we can call them serendipitous also. But essentially, this was the largest single kind of source of, most of the quotes were reflecting this pattern that people form connections and collaborations sort of in the course of their work. Whether it's because of pre-existing relationships that they had outside of the co-op's context, because they had shared interests with other organizations or individuals, or because they saw opportunities to apply or to connect with somebody, but sort of coming up spontaneously in the course of work. And then in the top right, we have the theme that's kind of almost the opposite of that one, where instead you have connections that are strategic intentional. So this is more, whereas the first is connections that occur spontaneously, these are connections that have been built intentionally. And that's partly driven by people realizing that they would like to take a more systemic approach to tackling the area that they're working in, deliberately finding partners where there are gaps, or in order to address the system in kind of a whole holistic way. This also includes co-ops building connections intentionally within a particular community. Mostly in this case, as we're having religious or racialized communities, but people are intentionally trying to take a collaborative ecosystem approach. And also we see people trying to create opportunities to make collaboration happen there at the bottom, so that they are putting on events or workshops or conferences that hopefully create opportunities for connection. The third major theme in how connections and collaboration happen is this idea that co-op connections are values driven, which I think reflects in many of the comments we've heard today. So many people become involved with co-ops in the first place because of the emphasis on community and participation and democratic principles that draws people into the co-op movement. But it also is a reason to reach out to other co-ops and to try to work collaboratively and with a mutual aid kind of approach. And so the sub-theme that really links all three of these main red themes is the idea that connections with other co-ops are important for learning. So whether people are spontaneously collecting with their co-ops because they have it's a way to access expertise or things you need, whether they are connecting with other co-ops intentionally because they share similar values, or because they're part of the same movement, or because they're operating within the same sector. Connecting with other co-ops for learning, training, and mentoring becomes sort of a unifying sub-theme that includes elements of all three of the red themes. The other thing that we saw mentioned in this data is challenges to connection. They're at the bottom in red. And the three kind of main sources of challenges that people talk about are the lack of access to resources, both financial, but also expertise, human resources of other kinds, a lack of time, and a feeling that people are already overburdened, and so it's hard to place an additional emphasis or additional burden on them in order to go out and seek connection. And some co-ops just reported feeling very isolated, that they were the only co-ops they were aware of in their own sector, or that there weren't other organizations that they knew to connect with within their area. And these kind of constraints and barriers to connection and collaboration obviously are hindrances, but they also shape the way the connection and collaboration happen, which is why they're connected to these other sub-themes as well. So the fact that people experience isolation, yes, it can be a barrier. It can also be a motivating factor to lead them to seek out and seek community and to foster participation. the fact that people are short on time can mean that people respond by trying to create intentional opportunities for connection, and lack of resources can drive opportunistic connection in terms of trying to seek those resources. So the constraints do also shape strategy as well as being barriers. So it's really the interplay between these kind of push and pull factors that seem to be shaping how connection and collaboration is happening in the movement. It's kind of that was what we want to highlight today. Also, just to mention that we can take, of course, these themes and try to compare them with the maps that we have of the network maps and see, do we see these types of strategies playing out, and are they reflected in the actual structure of the system as we have it now? So that's hopefully where we'll be going next. But for now, I hand it back to Julia.
Thank you, Ola. I will share a couple of several themes that speak to what can be done to strengthen the ecosystem to support the growing co-op seeds, or how for the cooperative ecosystem to become more intentional in facilitating and sustaining these connections and collaborations. So the six themes, and I will dive into more details within each of the theme. But the six themes are intentional spaces for co-op networks building, systems navigation tools, community building across the borders, inform and worker co-op academy, building co-op networks, and supporting cooperation among the co-ops. So starting with the intentional spaces for co-op network building, those may include channels for regular information exchange, so creating and sustaining those, organizing and strengthening local coalitions and regional support networks within provinces or regions within the provinces, sort of that place-based community development that is also important, but also facilitating online co-op mixers across the different geographies, because online co-op mixers were named especially relevant for co-ops based on the industry, because you may be only like one or two co-ops with in that particular industry within your specific geographical sector, but you would like to connect with people from the same sector and from different provinces. So facilitating online co-op mixers would be very important to sustain those sectoral collaborations. And then one important thing is increased access to in-person conference participation for members of from equity denied groups in the co-op movement, because this is where many connections, face-to-face connections, become forged and strengthened. Navigation tools may include co-op client referral system. So let's say you are a cleaning co-op and you may get a client that you are not able to service because of the geographical distance or another factors, and you would like to refer those clients to another co-op rather than just business as usual cleaning company. Finding and co-op development services navigator. And I believe that the resource guide that we've co-created contributes to that. This is, one of the first steps towards creating this finding and co-op development services navigation system. And an interactive network map of co-ops and supporting resources. And this is also something that we've been working on as a project team. And then community building across the borders, because that is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that is now more important than ever in this current political climate. And we need to forge this collaboration and alliances across the border. And this could include developing international cooperation with other co-ops, growing Black-led co-ops internationally, the system of Black-led co-ops and co-ops led by racialized community members, and intergenerational community building co-ops. Because as Hazel already mentioned, co-ops for many are part of that, part of our heritage. lineage, and then there is a lot of knowledge that need to be passed, and also those co-op members who are older, they have learned a lot from the members who are younger too, so that the intergenerational community building and knowledge exchange is important. And dreams, because it's important to dream. It's important to keep that a dream about our collective flourishing in our imagination, because, and I often say it, we are what we imagine. So we need to develop and grow our dreams and to create new narratives. This is how a dream worker co-op incubator would look like from the perspective of equity denied groups in the co-op movement. Seed funding. This worker co-op incubator would provide seed funding for emerging co-ops. Oops, sorry, I just jumped a few slides forward accidentally. The incubator would provide seed funding for emerging co-ops, would provide culturally responsive mentorship and coaching, hand-holding with more experienced co-ops during their first year, as the seeds is sprouting and establishing itself, help with navigating co-op supply chains, and bookkeeping and project management support, like a pool of services available to EDG-led co-ops at a discounted, lower than market rate price. I'm now handing it over to Hazel to speak to other resources and skill sharing networks for co-ops.
Thank you so much, Julia. I just got to get to the right slide over here, please. Okay, so yeah, some of the other resources and skill sharing networks that are out there right now. A newer one is called Co-ops for Co-ops, and that's an online database of service providers, which are co-ops that serve co-ops, and it's hosted out of I think it's Seas Montreal, which is also listed there, or Seas Solidarity Economy, and Populous and others based in Montreal. The Jedi Business Conversion Project, Empowering Equity Denied Groups, was a project that the Canadian Worker Co-op Federation carried out with federal funding from the Investment Readiness Program 2-3 years ago. And it was carried out by Janelle Maxwell with Juliet, who already was an equity advisor to our board, and others leading that as well. And there's great resources created from it that you can find on our website. And also connectedly, there's the co-op conversions project out of University of Toronto, which I'm sure you'll find a link to in there, that has wonderful reporting as well. That's not an active project now, simply due to lack of funding, not for lack of interest by any stretch. Anybody knows where we could find funding for it, tell us and we'll reinvigorate it. But the resources are still available. Yeah, Freedom Dreams Cooperative Education is a co-op development education hub that shares knowledge and resources about co-ops and the solidarity economy more generally from an intersectional Black, Indigenous, and people of color perspective, or BIPOC perspective. And I know there's at least one person from that group on the call. There's the Co-op and Social Enterprise Service Provider Directory, which is hosted by CWCF and is linked to the Jedi Business Conversion Project, and the names and contact info of those service providers can still be found on our website, which has some overlap with the Co-op Zone Network listing, but they're not completely overlapping, and people looking for a consultant should look both at this list and probably first the list of co-op developers listed on the Co-op Zone Network website, which is coming up later. And then the Co-op Conversations is hosted by the Canadian Centre for the Study of Cooperatives at the University of Saskatchewan in Saskatoon. It's a monthly online gathering for co-op sector professionals to learn from each other and from others in the field and exchange information in a casual Zoom setting, or virtual setting, I should say. Next is the Solid State Community Industries organization, which is based in Surrey, BC, in the Lower Mainland near Vancouver. And It is built by and for racialized communities who aim to create new kinds of non-extractive economic opportunities and relationships. And they're creating many co-ops and other kinds of social and solidarity enterprise, mostly with youth and mostly always racialized and or immigrant and mostly youth, from what I understand. Intercultural, then there's, sorry, this is still relevant to solid state. Intercultural learning, solidarity, and community are at the heart of their way of working and being together in the world. Next, there's SEAS. It stands for Solidarity Economy Incubation Zone, and often they make up some word to fit the E for C's, but anyway, it's an organization that it's a democratic organization that serves a thriving community of solidarity economy organizers and entrepreneurs in and around Montreal. I think primarily Anglophone based, but definitely bilingual too. Then there's the Women's Multicultural Resource and Counseling Center in Durham, Ontario's Worker Co-op program, which provides immigrant and racialized women with specialized training and mentorship to build sustainable worker-owned businesses. Lastly, Co-op Zone. It's a network of cooperative developers and open to memberships. Having a meeting at the Congress of Co-ops and Mutuals Canada at York University in Toronto in early June.
I want us to first of all share on what was said in the breakout rooms, report back, and then have time for the remaining slides. And thank you so much for your participation, because time flies when people participate. To introduce, I'm going to invite Hazel to introduce the resource guide to support equity denied groups in the co-op movement. I realize that I need to reshare the screen, so just give me a second. And Hazel, over to you. And then if we have a half a minute, maybe Nancy can also speak to the CMC project and the results in collaboration with CMC and the Federation.
I'll be super fast. All this is available on the website. And the only thing I want to say, so go find it and read it in depth, but the only thing I want to say about the CWCF and Co-ops and Mutuals Canada is that there are two comparable or similar goals kinds of projects going. Nancy Wanyi from CMC will speak briefly about theirs, and I just want to say our intention is to begin more collaborating because I think the two came up kind of separately and it's relatively recent. We're each aware that the other is there, so we'll just strengthen each other by collaborating further. We have a meeting planned fairly soon for leadership in both the projects, which is great. And Nancy, over to you also to be brief.
Thank you, Hazel. And Christine Clark, one of the lead researchers, is also on the call here, but we don't have lots of time. But the CMC project really centered around better understanding the landscape for equity deserving groups within the co-op movement and understanding the barriers, opportunities, and supports that they may be experiencing. And so that research has been completed and will start to disseminate here in the coming weeks and months. So looking forward for the opportunity to re-engage this group in this platform or a different platform. And the second phase of this project is really looking at, how do we move from recommendation to action with a proposal around running a pilot, better coordination of resources. So we're excited to partner with CWCF on their project to share information and to see how we can ensure that both research streams are really relevant for the work that we're doing.
And thank you so much again for joining the workshop today. Hazel, Chloe, would you like to say a few concluding words, or maybe Juliet and
Emma? I put it in the chat just to say I really want to thank the whole team. Apologies if I missed anybody, but Julia, yourself, Juliet, Emma, Kesa, Lucinia, Chloe, Daria, Ola. On the CWCF side, and also those leading the CMC project. And this was an awesome workshop. Looking forward to Worker Co-op Wednesday tomorrow. Thank you.
Yes, and this has been a very collaborative event. So thank you so much, everyone, for contributing to this workshop and to the project, whether you are a community-based researcher an academic colleague, a participant who responded to our surveys and interview, a research assistant, everyone who contributed to this. This is truly fruits of our cooperative labor and our collaboration.
And